Welcome back to the Shadow Business Guest Podcast. I am so happy to introduce our next guest here. I think she's a phenomenon, and she has okay, let me just start with this. She has written a book, but she's done so much more, right? But she has written a book, which I just finished reading this morning. I read it in 2 days, 3 days, because it's so well written. We're going to talk about that. Her book, Just Get Dressed, is an Amazon bestseller at this moment, and I know why. I am a serial reader. I read about 3 books a week, and I know when a book is good or not. Please welcome to the show, Samantha Harman.
What an introduction.
Yeah,
Wow.
from the
I
heart.
I could not be happier to be here on your podcast because, as I'm sure the listeners will agree, every time I see you on social media, I think, oh, impeccable style. What a
Thank you.
woman. So I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you so much. And we met each other in London. Actually, you were a speaker there on Overflow Live, and I loved what you spoke about, everything. And I knew that you were talking about your book, and I knew, okay, it's coming out. I have to buy it. And you agreed to be on my podcast, my little humble podcast. I'm so happy. So, Samantha, just before we dive in, how has been, because this book is out, because this is going to be released May 26th. It's going to be 2 weeks. So bear in mind when you're listening to this. But so how has been the first 12 days of the book? Because it came out May 1st. How has it been for you?
Overwhelming. I
Yes.
cannot believe the feedback that I've had on the
What has
book.
been the main, do you know? Like,
The
what is,
main feedback has been how much it has helped people
yeah.
change their relationships with their
Yeah.
wardrobe and men too, which has been quite a surprise. I didn't realize how many men were reading it. And I wrote it with the intention that it would be a book that would help people reconnect with their wardrobe and that they would hand it to their friend and say, this is a book that you must read. And I didn't realize how many people would then want to give the book to their community. So I've had a lot of orders from community hosts and program leaders who want to give this book to the people in their world. So it's been overwhelming,
Well,
honestly.
well, I mean, and righteously so. It's a brilliant book. We get to talk about this a lot at length, but I feel, as I said, I am reading a lot, always. I love to read. Since a child, I was always reading. You probably as well, right? Because when you're a writer, you read as well. And you can just tell when something is well written or not. And sometimes I would just, also one of the reasons why I can read that many books is after 100 pages, if it's just not good, I stop. I'm just, yeah, waste of life actually. But I I think, everyone should actually read this book. And I am also gifting it to my highest level clients as well. It's going to be a gift for them because I'm just giving it. I don't care because I just feel like everybody should read this. It also felt a little bit like my coaching as well, reading my coaching as well, a lot of systemic work, a lot of shadow work, actually, what's happening as well inside your book. And I love how you're tying that to fashion. And I have also been in the process of adapting a new style. And I've learned so many new things as well, because as you said, I really love style, fashion, dressing up. This was never a problem for me. My mother, she thought fashion was very important, and she also told me that there is actually a lot of layers and a lot of how do you say that, showing that you're educated, that you understand yourself, what you stand for, and all those things. All everything you talked about, political, patriarchal, all those things, and how important it is to create your own. But she also did have her shadows, which we might also touch upon. So, but thank you so much for seeing that, because it's so nice also to hear someone say that every once in a while. But I'm giving it to my clients, and I mean, it was such a joy to read, because it captures everything. It's a complete book, from personal behavior to environmental effects, a practical guide to the implications on society. And that's also why I feel like, yeah, that's it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, that's it, actually how I intended it, because I think that when you're talking about style, people have the assumption that that's shallow and that it's a frivolous topic.
Yeah.
But actually, we're all interacting with the fashion industry every single day because
Yes.
we wear clothes. And so it is important that we understand the impacts of our behavior and our decisions,
Yeah.
both on ourselves and our self perception, and therefore our businesses, and also
Yeah.
on the wider world. You know, I consider myself to be a feminist. I have a business that supports women, both in terms of the people that I work with and the people that I hire in my business. But I also need to be aware that my wardrobe has implications for women I cannot see,
Yeah.
for
It,
women all over the world
yeah, it
who are
does.
making the clothes and then having to deal with the impact of
Yeah.
our decisions to buy things.
I love that part. I love that part so much, right? About yes, impacts, implications, your choices, your daily choices, how that influences the lives of women around the entire world, not just the Western world, as we're led to believe is the only world. But it's just that, and I love that about that, and just really making it a broader gender discussion. It's just, I mean, I loved it all, and I was thinking, okay, yeah, she's nailing it. What kind of questions am I going to ask? Because I agree with everything, but I do have some, of course.
Good.
So, what I love so much about how you introduce it, right? You're saying this book does not change your life, you will. That's what you said. And also the thing that's missing from your wardrobe is you. It is very personal focused, right? So I really felt like you were just you were sitting across from me and we were having this conversation. That's how it read. And how where did this idea, because you do touch upon this, but where does this idea come from, that this desire from you that you feel like, ooh, everybody should actually, because as you said, clothing is a way to express yourself. It's, you know, that in all the forms of communication, non-verbal communication is the most important. Yes, that's posture, but it's also clothes, probably. And so, what got you? Was there something that you thought, oh, yes, this is why it should be personal? Did you see a fashion victim or something?
I was like, that person looks terrible. It was because in working with many women, the one question that they always ask that I have to help them to unlearn is, does this look okay? So when we're first
Yeah.
working together, they'll put something on and they'll say, does this look okay? And they have spent a lot of time trying on clothes and then sending photos of it to their friends on WhatsApp, asking that same question. So they're always
Yes.
outsourcing their sense of style, because from a very young age, that's what we're taught to do.
Yes.
We have parents who dress us, whether they, you know,
Yeah.
my mother is not, she's read the book and it was really interesting to hear her feedback on
What
it.
was her feedback?
She loved it. She learned a lot
Yes.
about herself and
Hmm.
me, and also the sacrifices that she had made.
Yeah.
And I think it really helped her with her own relationship with herself,
Yeah.
which was really, I think of all the feedback I've had, that's probably been the most significant,
Of
because my
course.
mother is not somebody who likes style. Her mother was very glamorous and very stylish. And I
Yes.
think sometimes we have a tendency to reject the things that our mother is. And so my mother rejected
Yes.
that from her mother. And then
Yes.
I rejected my mum's self
Yeah.
sacrifice.
And you naturally were drawn to your grandmother, maybe. And this happens a lot also in systemic work, right? Which I do the entire time. Yeah, I've recorded 1,000 podcasts about this. But that's the thing. We always tend to do that. Okay, so continue your story. Sorry.
Yeah.
But
So
yeah,
a lot of women ask,
yeah.
does this look okay?
Does this
And
look okay?
so my job is to ask them, why are you asking if this looks okay? What does okay mean? And why have we
Yeah.
been conditioned to settle for okay?
Yeah.
Why
Yeah.
is okay good enough
Yeah.
for us? It's not good enough. And
No.
one thing that I've really learned, I didn't have, as people read in the book, the best relationship with myself or clothes growing up. And when I became a newspaper editor, I had no idea what to wear in that role, because there were no women doing that role.
Yeah.
And in learning all these things for myself about style and how to use it in a way that conveyed authority when I would walk into rooms and people would be expecting a middle-aged man, other women started to ask me to help them. And I thought, but there are personal stylists. That is a thing. You
Yeah.
can hire a personal stylist.
Definitely.
Why are these women asking me? At this point, I had no personal styling qualifications in the practicals of style. And I realized in speaking to them, it's because the personal styling industry is talking about clothes, and actually their problem is identity and beliefs. So
Yeah.
there's this huge gap in the way that the personal styling industry talks to women about fashion, because it's
Yes.
like, here's an outfit that you could wear to the beach, or
Yeah.
here's what you should wear if you're an apple shape. That doesn't actually help with any of the stuff that the wardrobe actually is, which is systemic issues, generational trauma, beliefs, identity, class systems, politics. All of this stuff is actually converging in your wardrobe. And I really felt like that was a huge gap in personal styling. And
Definitely. Yeah.
if the industry can learn how to speak to women in a way that actually helps them with the real problem, because the real
Yeah.
problem isn't that they don't have clothes, right? We all have an abundance of clothes.
Yeah.
Having nothing to wear is never actually about having nothing to wear and having to be
Yeah.
naked. It's something, it's internal stuff that's
Yeah.
going on.
Yeah.
So I really wanted to make that clear.
Yes, I mean, I love that. And you know what I loved so much about this, and this is also really that's why I feel like we are very similar actually after reading your book, is you're not taking the easy road. And I would like to talk about that, but I love this because I did want to ask you, how did you start this career? Just also from a business perspective, but it was just classic story. People were asking you, how do you do that? And that's how you got to it. And you know what? I love those content pieces of content, right? Okay, you have to pair this jeans with this type of t-shirts, blah, blah, blah. It's easy to digest. It's just fun, right? I like doing it. I do get some ideas from it, obviously, but that's not the work. And the same with me, for instance, with business. Yes, of course, perfect. Perfect. There's these ways to grow your business, very easy tactics. Yes, that works. But if you're not looking at your shadows and if you're not looking at your family system, yeah, it's going to be very difficult to build from that. And actually, that's where I see the similarity. And that's why I was nodding the entire time. I still have neck pain of nodding all the time when I was reading. Okay. So, and so what is for you? So, not taking the easy road.
Yeah, I've never taken the easy road.
What is that? Why are you? But what is? Why are you? Because what I love. Okay, so let me be frank here. Because what I loved in your talk in London, you were part of a panel, and I thought you really stood out with your. I mean, I think everybody did, but I think you stood out with your story and being so convicted.
Yeah, I think I have a lot of passion, and I think that's what has got me here today. Because, as you will know, our childhood and where we come from, that generational stuff,
Yes.
it really shapes our beliefs and our behavior in ways that we cannot understand. We know so much about epidemiology and how stuff is literally passed down in your genes. You might have an
Yes.
aversion to something, you have no idea why, and it's because your great grandparents or your grandparents suffered trauma that then altered what has happened to your DNA.
Yes.
I really, it probably sounds weird to other people outside of a podcast about this particular topic, but I really viscerally felt that. I really felt
Yeah.
the trauma of previous generations. My grandparents, all of them grew up practically, my grandfathers particularly, they grew up like practically destitute, and they're wearing rags. They were wartime children.
Yeah.
My granddad was in the war, and I really feel that that has an impact. And so I was born on a council estate. I lived on a council estate. My parents worked really, really, really hard from a very young age. Money was a sore subject. One of my
Yeah.
first ever memories is hearing my dad cry about money. I've never seen him cry. Never seen the man
Mm,
cry since, not even at his own father's funeral.
yeah.
Because he was so stressed about money, because he had
Yes.
3 children under 5 and we didn't have food on the table.
Yeah.
And so I obviously formed the belief that money is really hard to make. And at the same time as that, you know, it was the toxic noughties and 90s where nothing tastes as good as skinny feels, and I was very
Yeah.
much made to feel like my body was not right.
Yeah.
And those things work together to tell me that I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
And that is the work. So I've had clients since then, since doing all this work for myself, I've had clients who are very, very successful, and they've previously worked with a personal stylist, and the personal stylist has got them incredible items of clothing that are really good quality, that work together. Those items will stay in that woman's wardrobe unworn because she grew up in maybe a similar environment to me,
Yeah.
and she has a belief that she's not good enough to wear these clothes.
Exactly. That's
So
it. Yeah.
it's actually really hard work, and that is, I think, not the problem with this work, because the right people want to come to this work, to your work and my work, and do
Yeah.
that work. But
Exactly.
a lot of people don't. They just
Yeah.
want the easy option.
Yeah.
They just want the new wardrobe, or they just want the Instagram story hacks, and
Yeah.
they want the result without doing the untangling. And the untangling is so hard, but it is the only way of long-term success.
Exactly. And you can't save everyone, right? It's just it's also that's the thing. And we both have to really accept that, and it's just what it is. So chapter 3 was about money, and that could
Mhm.
be a whole book, I thought.
Yep.
And actually, this is also the work that I do. What was your mother's money story? And what is your money story? What am I worth? And exactly what you said about not even, this was later in the book, but not even wanting to go into being afraid of going into a store of, for instance, the Max Mara store, right? So that's for many people, that's, oh yeah, that will be a dream, but yeah, I cannot buy a coat like that. But actually, if you calculate and if you really look, you probably can afford it. And there's also some pride in delayed gratification and just really getting something that you want and not getting something that there is. And that was the biggest change actually for me personally by reading the book, is that I come from quite a humble background. There was also not a lot of money. I always had to choose, right? I had to be really, and so when I got some money for clothes, which was really compared to my classmates was not a lot. But when I got it, right, I really had to make an executive decision, right? I had to, have to have meetings. I had to with myself, right? I had to have mood boards, all those things, because there was not a lot. And I remember actually when I was studying, it was even worse because then I had to, fend for myself. I had to pay everything myself, right? When I was studying in Amsterdam. And I actually, when I went out, I actually cut up pantyhose and then used that as a top, right? And then I used the top as a skirt. It looked brilliant, right? Because it was very club kid, very, and late aught. It was perfect, but I really had to be creative. And right now it's much easier, right? But I still have that kind of scrap, but I have Dries van Noot, I have The Row, I have Vivienne Westwood, everything is in my club, right? Really the brands that I want. But I'm still kind of having that idea of this is what I have, this is what I have to work with. But actually, I have to say goodbye to some stuff after reading the book. I have a lot of work to do because I just changed everything, but now I'm going to rechange everything again. And that's the thing, not that was really for me the biggest insight, not just working with what you have, but really working with what you desire.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Which so many women that I work with, they are highly successful. They can afford to invest in good quality pieces, and it would save them lots of time in the long run, because the better quality you buy, the longer it's going to last.
Yeah.
And what they do instead is they compromise.
Yeah.
And that particular story about that client who wanted to shop in Max Mara,
Yeah.
I have never had so much backlash than when I told that story on the internet, particularly from women. Women were telling me that my client was selfish and that she was stupid, and it
Because
was
she
really
went to Max Mara or because she didn't go there.
because she wanted to go. So what
Ah.
happened was, she is very high up in a major global company,
Yeah.
and she has children. And she realized that for her job, she needed to look presentable. I know
Yeah,
that,
of course.
it's a big topic, but you've got to look the part if you're going to do
Yeah.
a job like that. She's going into
Yes.
meetings with very important people. And she found herself going into one designer store to buy her children some things. And then for herself, she was stood in front of the sale rail at Marks and Spencer. And she realized, I want to shop in Max Mara, and I deserve to
Yeah.
shop in Max
Yeah.
Mara. But because of not just childhood beliefs, again, she grew up without much, societal expectations that women, particularly mothers, must martyr themselves,
Yeah.
meant that she felt like she couldn't spend her own money that she's worked so hard for on the things that she
Insane.
wanted.
Yeah.
And it really, when I shared that story and I got so much backlash, I thought, yeah, you're just mirroring back the problem that I'm explaining to you that
Yeah.
there is, because clearly we're so stuck in our internalized misogyny and this idea that to be a woman is to martyr
Yeah.
yourself, that we think it's somehow selfish for a woman to invest in her appearance. And when she does that, she feels better, she feels more confident, so she's able to advocate for herself and others more. She makes more money, she's able to hire more people. It's a
Yeah.
win-win situation.
Exactly. That's it. But the default setting is martyrdom, and then
Yes.
that's what you kind of choose if you're not doing this work. Because if you do this work, you realize, oh no, you know what? Actually, I have to kind of take a higher road or a more helicopter view. Actually, that's a better word. And then, okay, actually look at this. So I wanted to know when I was reading the book. So I love men's fashion.
Mhm.
I, and actually, in a fashion sense, maybe also even a societal sense, I don't know, but I would love to be a man because I love good, really good tailored suits. And and anyways, I think you call it a three-piece suit, right? Sorry, I have my Dutch words and then but so that's what I really really love. And I love to have the idea of kind of a uniform, right? And so how do you look at, and you touch upon it a little bit, but looking at men's fashion and that it's actually quite easy, if you're going to a right tailor or get it at a right shop or again and then get it tailored a suit, then you're done. Versus with women is such a different expectation and maybe also in a business context, but it's actually much more difficult to find something which is just as easy, so to say, as a suit. How do you look
Yeah.
at that? Do you
Yeah.
agree?
Yeah, it's frustrating. And again, I think it's patriarchy, because as long as the women are having to continue to focus on finding clothes that fit, that never quite fit properly,
Yeah.
then their eye is off the ball about other things. Whereas men, they are able to spend more money on clothes. We actually know that
Yeah.
men spend more
That's
on
so interesting.
than women do.
Yeah.
But obviously, there is this trope of the shopaholic or the silly woman, shopping is my cardio. Actually, men spend more per item, and that's fine. If a man gets promoted, well, of course, he's going to have a new tailored suit because
Yeah.
that's the expectation. Whereas for a woman, what do you mean she hired a personal stylist? That's really selfish. I think also there is something about it being a European issue. I really find that when I have American clients,
Yeah.
there is more of the, because of I think the just inclination towards independence and American dream. T-
Well, and
tip,
also the history, right?
yeah,
There was
war
no
and
Second
yeah,
World War on American
yeah,
ground. Obviously, that does influence your
yeah,
family. And if they didn't have famine and all those things, it does influence who you are
yes.
right now.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely it does. And I really do find it with European clients that we do have, even though it seems, the Second World War was years ago, yes, but it
Yeah.
was in your grandparents' time. And we know, like you said, for epidemiology, we know that we all come from an egg inside of our grandmother. So actually, part of you did exist.
Exactly.
Like,
That's it.
as crazy as it sounds, part of you
Yeah.
did exist during that time.
Yeah.
So you are still carrying some of that trauma to this day. And going back to the men point, yeah,
Yeah.
because of patriarchy, essentially, and because men have been in the corporate system for longer than women,
Yes,
well,
that's probably
men
also the reason. Yeah.
spend more on clothes. I do feel slightly sorry for men in the way that they are not able to express themselves.
Yes, this is what I hear from many men. Yeah.
And I think that's why the book has been of interest to men, because I do think that they would love to express themselves more and they should be able to express themselves more,
Yeah.
but they feel unable because our society judges that so much. And I think it's really good that we have role models like Harry Styles, who,
Yeah.
he'll be walking around in a dress and painted nails and whatever else.
Yeah.
I think it's really important that boys have role models like that.
Yeah.
And I think it's also important that we, as parents, a lot of my friends that they have sons, their sons will want to dress up in dresses, and
Yeah.
they let them without commenting on it, because that's self-expression and you're helping your child to find his or her or their identity.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Yes, yeah, I have not thought about it that way, but exactly. No, I've heard this actually from a lot of men. They were saying, no, it's actually not fun. You know, when I'm going shopping, it's so much more fun to look at the women's section. I'm like, no, I don't like that. That's, but
Why don't
that's
we have, I think, wouldn't it be better if we just had like clothes
yes,
for everyone and then we could all pick
that's
and
it.
choose
Yeah, I would
whatever
love
it is
that.
that we
But
want to wear?
yes, and then, but also the language of clothes, right? Why can't a little boy wear a dress and then being, yeah, watch out, he's going to turn out gay. I mean, how? Why? It's just, uh, who are you helping, really? That's the thing.
Yeah,
Boring
it's very
people.
right. It's very frustrating. I have a friend who came to my wedding and he's heteronormative. He's married to a woman
Yeah,
and he has a great flamboyant sense of style. So at my wedding, he wore a floral suit. And I remember like some people being like, oh my God, like,
yeah, yeah,
like he looks great. Shut up.
yeah.
Isn't
But
it a shame that you don't feel able to express yourself in the same way that he is able to? Isn't it sad
yeah,
you don't have the self-confidence
yeah.
to do that?
Well, he's the mirror.
Yes.
And but he's a mirror, but also, of course, this comes from this really, really age-old idea that you have to be, in order to survive, you have to be a part of the pack. And you have to conform and not stand out too much because else you will die. That was literally what we still think, prehistorically, and that's still actually also inside our brains. And and that's maybe also one of the reasons why women ask, does this look good?
Yes. Yeah, because they want to know that they have group consensus.
Yeah.
And in the book as well, there is some research around the way that we judge women who do spend money on their clothes, even though we perceive them as being more successful, we also judge them as being less trustworthy. And
Yeah.
so that probably plays into it a bit because we want to assimilate with the people around us so that they, like you said, don't throw us out of the pack. And yeah, I think that this is when you are a woman who has achieved some sense of social mobility, it's almost like you're trying to exist in two different worlds.
Yes.
Like you no longer fit into where
Yeah.
you come from, and you don't feel like you fit into the rooms that you're now in.
Yeah.
And so you're always compromising on your personal style in whichever room
Yeah.
you go into. So you might find that, let's say that you've worked really hard and you've bought yourself the Chanel handbag, you're never going to wear that to meet your family for lunch
Yeah.
because they just would not understand why you would make that purchase.
Yeah.
And then there'll be things that you feel like you can't wear in the rooms that you're now in because there is a certain expectation of what a person in that room looks like, and you don't feel like you quite belong.
So what does that balance look like for you? Because what you're touching, I think, is so fascinating. This is why this book is so important of you, is that in what kind of percentage would you say? So exactly, actually, I think a lot of my clients have this, social mobility, but also people who are coming from another country, maybe also fled here. You're also not really a part of any land. Same with this, and then what do you suggest? How much people have to, because yes, of course, having that personal style, but then you also have all these different situations. And how much do you believe, maybe percentage wise or whatever, how you want to say it, but how much do you have to show of yourself, or how much do you think you, because sometimes people also, for instance, with family functions, I would always dress up, but it was
Yeah.
also, I was with my mother, right? And my mother was kind of the same, and then her grandmother as or my grandmother as well. So it was kind of, oh yes, of course. But in how much do you have to conform to the room or the environment that you're in without losing your personal style? Do you have some examples, or what do you think?
I think that in some cases you do have to conform because privilege is a real thing, right? And on the internet, it's become very popular for people to say that what you wear doesn't matter. And oh, I wear my pajamas all day and I have unbrushed hair and I make 10K and it
Yeah.
doesn't matter what you look like. That's true when you acknowledge how much privilege that takes, because normally that kind of thing is said by white heteronormative
Yes.
people from a particular background who have already an automatic level of authority simply because of what they look like
I
and who they
love this. Oh, I love
and
this.
it's really frustrating when I see that because there is never any acknowledgement of the privilege that you have to be able to do that. Not everyone can walk into a room and automatically be assumed to be an authority. And in fact, there are some studies, there's one in the book about professors and a black professor versus a white
Yeah.
professor, and
Yes.
how a black professor will be deemed as less trustworthy by the students
Yeah.
simply because of the color of their skin. And then you add into that what they're wearing. So if a professor was wearing athleisure, for an example,
Yeah.
versus a white professor, people judge them very differently. So
Yeah.
we need to acknowledge the privilege that comes with saying, "Oh, what you wear doesn't matter." It doesn't matter to you because you have that privilege, but the privilege exists. So
Yeah.
that needs to be taken into consideration. And unfortunately or fortunately, inside of a corporate system, if you want to either be inside the system, so you are employed in the system, or you are working as I do with clients who are inside of that system,
Yeah.
there is a particular level of dress. There are tiers of dressing, and we can talk about how out of date or out of touch those tiers are, but nevertheless they do exist, right? And every
Yeah.
time you go up a level of formality, personal style decreases. So if you are at the smart business level, the expectation is that your personal style is secondary to
Yeah.
the environment that you're in.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say. The more casual the environment, the higher the percentage of your personal style. So if you're
Yeah.
going to, I don't know, for drinks at a bar with your friends, personal style, you can 80-90% of the personal style versus the situation practicality, like, am I wearing the right shoes, right? Are my shoes going to hurt my feet or whatever? Whereas if you are going into a very formal event, like let's say you were going to meet the king, then but like the formality of that occasion takes
Yes.
over personal style. So
Yes.
that's the way to think of it. That every time you go up a level of formality, shave off like 10% of personal style.
Yes. And I'm also glad you're saying that, and also because you're a British person, and the British are so much more aware of how do you say that, ranks in society,
Oh my
right?
god,
Because
it's
the
yeah, it's
entire,
all these little like
yeah,
nuances that we
yeah,
have that is just unspoken.
yeah. Can you name one? Because it's not just UK people listening to this podcast; it's worldwide. But what is one thing, as the style editor, that you think, oh, that is really something that people should know about, or this is really strange, or
You know what? I think if you look at something like Royal Ascot, if you look at an occasion
yes,
like Royal Ascot, you will see what we mean by the class system. And there's almost this trope in the UK, the elite levels, the establishment mock very much working class people.
yes,
And so you will see it if you look at any of the tabloids regarding any of the tabloids or the newspapers that are aimed at the establishment, they'll just be mocking working class people for wanting to look good. So an
Yeah.
example of this, prime example, is in UK soap operas, Coronation Street, EastEnders. You will find that the glamorous women, they are wearing, fur coats or big earrings or bright eyeshadow. Cat Slater, Pat Butcher are examples of this, and it's almost like for women, for working class women, it's I think like a preservation thing. We like to dress up, and it's almost like just get dressed, put your best foot forward for whatever's happening. But from the establishment, it's like, look at these, that like,
Yeah.
they'll never be as classy as us. And
Yes.
interestingly, when Kate married Prince William, bearing in mind that Kate Middleton is from a very wealthy family, she's
Yeah.
from a very privileged background, he was mocked by the establishment for being
Yeah.
a commoner,
Yeah.
which is just laughable to me,
Yeah.
because that woman is not a commoner. She's
No.
she's from a very privileged background. So it's stuff like that
Yeah.
that I think outside the UK you wouldn't ever think Kate Middleton is a commoner,
No.
but that's what the establishment thought of Kate
Yeah.
Middleton when she
Yeah.
married Prince William.
And that's how strong that idea is. And it's historically it's also very important for the establishment to protect
Mm.
their status, so to say. So this is a perfect way actually to show that they understand.
Yes.
And so it's a protection, really,
Yep.
and keep and literally, as it says, keeping it established as it is, and not let other people, commoners, ruin the idea of style and luxury. And it's true. And so the more, and this is something that you've probably seen doing this work. How long are you doing this work, actually?
I have been full time now for nearly 4 years.
Beautiful. Yes. So the more you do this work, the more you see, and the more you also hear, because you probably also have clients from all different kinds of backgrounds, maybe even also people from the establishment
Yep.
as a client. Yes.
Mhm.
So you know the way they speak, and then you also see things more. And so, for instance, in my case, I live in a beautiful village in the Netherlands, in het Gooi, and it's one of the richest villages in the country. And we live here because it's absolutely beautiful. We're not the richest people in the Netherlands, absolutely not. But it's interesting to see, because we lived in Amsterdam for a long time. You don't really see, style as it's more street style, right? But here you can really tell when somebody is doing their best, when somebody's actually really loaded, and then there's the people who actually don't care and look like trash, but are probably the most established ones. So that's the Dutch culture, right? So it's also understanding the national layers and the cultural layers, and yeah, I find it fascinating because I see it when people are visiting from outside of my village. I see, oh, I love that they're really doing their best, without sounding condescending, but I just see it, right? And the
Yep.
more you get into this, yeah, it's really just a language on its own, and it's just you've really put brilliant words to it. And so you just, and then we're kind of going to our final question, but I love the idea of creating outfits, and about buyer behavior. One of the things that I've done is wait 24 hours before actually doing a purchase. That has really changed the game for me because of many things I didn't think about anymore. But just really the practical of it, right? It's not just, oh, yes, patriarchy here, environment here. No, but actually, okay, so how do you get to work? Create that diary, really, it's just, and also have a more updated style. And the difference between styles and trends, it just covers everything. And I just, what I loved so much about the book is the epilogue about Audrey.
Mhm.
And was this the grandmother of your father or your mother? I don't remember.
Mother.
Of
Yeah.
your mother's. Okay, so that was the stylish one. Yes.
Yeah, she was. Yeah, but she was very working class. So she,
Yes.
from the UK, it was very much, regardless of what was happening, Audrey was putting on her fur coat. Audrey was putting on her
Yeah.
big sunglasses. Audrey was putting on her imitation Chanel perfume,
Yes.
and it was a she used style as armor. And
Armor. Yes.
yeah, yeah, I really think that in tough situations it helped her to steel herself, I think,
Yeah. Beautiful.
regardless of what was going on.
So how do you, because you're sharing it in the book, but this is the Shadow Business podcast, so it would be nice. So how do you feel like you relate to her? What would she think of you right now?
I hope she'd be very proud of me,
I
but
think I think she would definitely. When
so
I read that story, I was crying actually this morning. I was like, oh, so
aw.
cute. Yeah.
It, it's yeah. So Audrey was born in 1920 in September 1927, and she was very intelligent, and she had a natural aptitude for writing and reading, and she got awarded a place at grammar school, which was very unusual
Yes.
because she was a dockyard worker's daughter. They lived in central Portsmouth. They were very working class, and her teacher fought. But her mum didn't want her to go to grammar school, but her teacher fought for her to go. However, unfortunately, just before her 12th birthday, the Second World War broke out. And obviously,
Yeah.
she lives in Portsmouth, which was one of the most heavily bombed places in the whole of Britain. And she used to, in the air raids, she would get a candle and she would read her book by candlelight.
Yeah.
And obviously, that got her into a lot of trouble because it's a very
Yeah.
dangerous thing to
Yeah.
do. In December 1930, their house got bombed and 60 people in their road died. Thankfully,
Wow.
I can't explain why, they weren't home. So they survived and she got evacuated. And then after the war, she was 19. She was working in a hospital where she met a soldier from Glasgow who grew up in the tenements in a place called the Gorbals, which is, even today, if you know Glasgow, like very rough place to live.
Hmm?
Anyway, they ended up getting married, and from the ages of 19 to 40, when my
Insane.
grandma had my
Yeah.
mum,
Yeah.
she was having children from 19 to 40. She
I
had
read that.
six
I was thinking, oh my gosh.
children. Like her whole life was
Yeah.
basically having babies and working around that. And she was very intelligent. She was always very glamorous. Her and Jock, my granddad, did not have the best relationship. I think they loved each other very much, but was very tempestuous, and he was in and out of prison, and
Oh.
all sorts of stuff was good. He would spend all their money on
Yeah.
big parties for the whole estate,
Yeah.
and eventually Audrey died penniless. And we have, I think, there's one ring that we have of my grandmother's, which my sisters and I share. She died in a council house 3 doors down from the one where she raised her family and over the road from the one in which she lived as a child. Like her whole life was on this square
Yeah.
of land on a council estate that I grew up on. And I think that she is probably the person that I know had the most wasted potential. And I
Yeah.
think it's her story is a real story of a place in time, because had the war not happened, or had she
Yeah.
had some of the rights that we have, or had she had the technology that I have today, what would she have done?
Yeah.
And that has always driven me, because I've always thought, what would Audrey do if I'm facing a situation where I'm a bit scared to do something? I think, imagine if Audrey had this opportunity. She would
Yeah.
just take the opportunity. So she literally risked her life to read books, and I felt like the least that I could do was write one.
I love this story so much. It's so beautiful. And this is, yes, I mean, yes, wasted potential. We speak about that a lot also in our coaching, and what is so magical also about this time right now, we don't we are actually changing that story for daughters, granddaughters, all the things. So that's it's really happening right now. And as you're saying, she risked her life reading books. I can write a book.
Yep, I have the technology. I may as well.
That's
Just
it.
even for me as a child, growing up, writing a book felt like something I would never get to do, because writing a book was for the establishment. It was for people with the connections. I
Yeah.
didn't have any of that. Now we have the technology, and I really don't believe it's a coincidence. I just think we exist right now at this tiny moment in time where all of this stuff is happening, where we have the means to achieve our dreams.
Yeah.
That's never happened before in history.
Yeah.
Women
That's
like
true.
us, and it feels, I think it feels very hard because we are still navigating
We
all
are
of that stuff.
pioneering.
Yeah, and that is a hard thing to do.
It
And
is.
as women particularly, there's a lot of societal stuff that we're dealing with, and it feels like a lot of pressure, I know, to put on yourself of like, you're a pioneer, but you are, so you can
Yeah.
either
Yeah. No,
suck
yeah.
it up and be a pioneer or not.
Yeah, no matter what you do, you are a pioneer anyway.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, and I feel like people are saying, yeah, but I mean, 50 years ago, women could already work. Yeah, but they did not do work that they liked, and they still had a family of thousands children. And right now, it's different. Also, thanks to the internet, yes. Also, thanks to laws. There are still a lot of laws against us, actually. But I feel like your book is really, bring a contribution to that pioneership, as to say, and to really, yeah, give kind of hands and feet to this topic, which is so important for women, actually, but for society as a whole. So I just, Samantha, I really want to thank you for writing the book in the first place, for taking the time to be on the Shadow Business podcast. It has been an absolute marvel. And well, maybe I am going to buy those books for my clients, but maybe we might do something else soon, or I'm going to invite you or anything. I'm not really sure yet, but I feel like this story should be shared so much more. And yeah, thank you so much for your work so far.
Thank you so much for having me. I've loved this conversation, and I think that you are brilliant, and you
Thank
are
you.
somebody who, I admire, and I think the work that you're doing is really important.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for being here. And I'm going to introduce us right now. So, thank you so much for listening to the Shadow Business podcast and our guest podcast here. I will put the link of the book of Samantha, which we spoke about, in the show notes. And I will also share her Instagram profile, which is also really a fun watch. Thank you so much for listening. This Thursday will be another regular episode. And then next week will be our next guest. Thank you so much for being here, and see you in the next episode. Bye.